Hey, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. I want to give you guys a chance to get the conversation started. My name is Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World and the Black Business School. And this week we have Powernomics Thursday, and we have the one and only, the great Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Claud Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2, and the Black History Reader. And before I begin the conversation, I would like to ask Dr. Anderson, how are you doing today, sir?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I'm in a good mood today. Things are picking up and improving all around, except what I see on TV. Okay.
Well, that ain't never gonna get better. I hate to tell you that, but that ain't never gonna get better.
Right.
Yeah. But so, Dr. Anderson, I this morning I was reading through Powernomics, and and I was trying to get an understanding of, some of the issues here. I was reading actually about, things like education reform, stuff like that. I read your book every week because I'm always gaining something new, from your perspectives. And one of the things that you brought up when we were just talking just now is you talked about mechanisms that are used, for systematic racism. That there's systems and processes in place that keep Black folks where they are, that don't allow us to move forward. And I'd be curious to know if you could describe some of these mechanisms and how some of that works.
Well, it's a very simple practice. See, what white folk have done intentionally is to maldistribute all the major wealth in the country into the hands of the dominant white society, period. And they know that wealth is the great determinant, a motivator of opportunities and rights and privileges in the country. Wealth is the base of it. Without wealth, you have no rights, no privileges, and opportunities. That's like saying, I'm going to go down to Ritz-Carlton, I said, and live well and eat and get the biggest, most expensive room and eat lobsters. If you don't have the wealth, you have nothing. Wealth is a great determinant in a capitalist society. That's the basic line. As I indicated to you on previous interviews, that capitalism was based off of enslavement. And capitalism is a society we're in. Now they're going to be talking about Bernie Sanders talking about socialism. That's a waste of time for Black folk. Don't engage in that. Socialism is a class concept. It's a horizontal concept. Racism is vertical. When capitalism came into existence, Dr. Watkins, it was based on a very simple understanding that learning how to own and control all the land, tools, and resources, and use other people's labor to produce wealth and riches for yourself. That's what capitalism. Now, if Black folk own practically nothing, there's no way you can become wealthy. A job is a myth about changing your wealth status by having a job. A job is also designed strictly to maintain you and keep you at the same level where you've always been. That's 1 week away from welfare, food stamps, and unemployment rolls. So wealth is a great determinator. Now people say, well, Dr. Anderson, we got Blacks, look at those Blacks making all these $200 or $300 million, $100 million a year in salary, playing baseball, football, basketball, and acting in the movies. That is not wealth, that's income. There's a major difference between income and wealth. Wealth is what's happening after you labor, what's left over, that's wealth. Wealth comes primarily from what you produce. And right now, whether you're running with ball, football, tennis ball, dancing, singing, what you're producing primarily is sweat. You're not producing necessarily money for yourself. And so if you're going to change the wealth equation in this country, you must understand that right now there's a conscientious structural system that's designed to keep you at the bottom. That's why right now, because of the maldistribution of wealth in this country, where whites only control 98% of all the wealth in the country, that even if white folk did not accumulate any more wealth, Dr. Watkins, they stop right now and say, every white person in America, stop. And it's illegal and it's unconstitutional for you to acquire any more wealth. You stay right there while Black folk acquire some wealth. Do you know if they did that, it would still take 239 years for Black folk to catch up to where white folk are right now. Now you think about that now. You're a master in economics. Think about that. That if white folk quit, cease and desist in earning, and remember that 87% of white folks' earning is unearned income, is coming from wealth. The 87% of what they declare as income every year is coming from what they own and control. They don't work for it. They always tell Black folk, go get a job. When 87% of white folk can get wealth without working a job. And so if they stop right now, it would take Black folk 239 years to be where white folk are now. That's even if white folks do it still. And I'm gonna tell you why what's holding black up and acquiring wealth, and why they're going down and not having it. And you want to run through some things, I'm gonna tell you, here's what I tell your students. Every one of them right now, pick up a pad, a pencil, and I'm gonna run through some things, and you write these things down. These are the key things. These are the major devices that white folk use to make sure you never get any wealth, and a little bit you got, they're gonna strip it from you. You're gonna go down. And you, let me know when you're ready, and I'll sort of run them off to you. Tell them to write them down and go and become activists and hit every civil rights leader, every politician, and say, go deal with these issues that Dr. Anderson just gave us. Otherwise, we're locked out. We're going to bottom out. We're never going to acquire any power or wealth in this nation. Are you ready?
Yes. So everybody who's listening, I'm talking to Dr. Claud Anderson, who's the author of the book, Black Labor, White Wealth, Powernomics, the Black History Reader, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. His website, by the way, is powernomics.com. And we're about to go through the different mechanisms that are keeping black wealth down. A lot of you all saw the study recently, or everybody's talking about the study that says that black wealth is expected to drop to 0 by 2053. Well, there's a reasoning behind that. And you're not getting the real reasons from the politicians or from the mainstream media. Dr. Claud Anderson and myself as well, we're specialists in this area. And him more so than me, he's been doing it far longer than I have. And we're going to give you another perspective that we think is more effective in terms of solving the problem. We're solutions oriented here. So Dr. Anderson, please fire away. Everybody get out a pad and a pen so you can write down what Dr. Anderson has to say here. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, and these are the major devices they use, the little games they use to keep black folk in a low status and as a permanent underclass in our society. That's why the Department of Commerce and the Census report back in 2014 says black folk are a permanent underclass. And here's what's going to keep you as a permanent underclass. And these little techniques might change, but this is what they've used throughout history. And they're still doing it presently. And they're going to be using it in this next campaign that's coming up for the President of the United States. The Democratic Party, the Republican Party, liberals and conservatives alike will use these techniques on black folk to make sure they mislead, confuse them, and maintain their position in the lowest class in our society. First thing they do, they use very broad, ambiguous terms. Anytime you cut on the TV for the news or anything else, and you hear somebody use these very broad, ambiguous terms like we the people, the American people, that is a technique that's broad and comprehensive to make sure that black folk never know what's going on. It's designed to confuse and mislead you. Two, the thing they always use this term called a colorblind society. This is not a colorblind society. It has never been a colorblind society. And the only time that word colorblindness ever came up, Dr. Watkins, was in 1896 in the Plessy v. Ferguson legal issue. What you all called, I remember when they said that came up in the court system about Plessy v. Ferguson, saying that's the first time they ever used that word. And Judge Harlan used that in 1896, saying that we should be a colorblind society. But you cannot have racism in a colorblind society. So that's just a term that was used by him. Everybody picked it up and said, we're a colorblind society. This society has always been very color specific. It's always very color specific. Nobody's you can't be colorblind and say, well, we don't see any blackness. They do see it. So that's the second thing they use. The other thing they do, they do it all the way through history. They always try to capture, control, and eliminate black leadership. That's why right now you have absolutely no black leadership of any consequence, not as individuals or organizations. You cannot find one organization in America right now that's conscientiously speaking out strictly and solely for black folk. Maybe the Harvest Institute and maybe your business school. Nobody else gives a damn about black folk. You have no black personalities that are speaking strictly and solely for blacks. That's either whether in the religious aspects or in economics or in politics in the Congressional Black Caucus. They're all double agents. They speak for any and everybody to make sure nothing changes for you. The third thing they do, they corrupt anything. They corrupted the second Constitution of the United States, which gave blacks some opportunities to acquire some wealth and resources. They changed that by neutralizing it through the United States Supreme Court. So that now black folk have no rights and nothing to defend themselves with. They killed off the Freedmen Bureau so they couldn't do anything. Fourthly, they fabricate things like minorities, put blacks into a minority category. And every time new groups of immigrants come into the country, they fabricate minorities and women and gays and everybody else to neutralize that concept to make sure that blacks get nothing. Fifthly, what they use a term called these things that black folk can never get. They like to talk about equality and equal opportunity. That is the dumbest thing you can do in a society where you got a vertical order, ranking order of people. Black folk don't need equal opportunities or equality. You can't get it. Don't look for anything that you can't measure. They know that. And so whenever they say, get redistribute some resources into the hands of black folks, you know what they're gonna say, Dr. Watkins? Well, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make sure we're gonna treat everybody equal. That's the worst dumb thing you can ever do, is try to treat everybody equal in a race-based society. By saying we're gonna treat everybody the same. Here's what that means. If you got a black person who's got a penny, and you got a white person that has $1,000. So we're gonna treat them all equal and give everybody the same treatment, same thing. So what have you got now? Now a black person got, when you double it, now a black person got 2 pennies and the white's got $2,000. You cannot talk about equal opportunity in a society that is race-based unless you correct the inequalities that exist between them. The next thing, and I'll stop in a few minutes, let you cut in, is that they always want black folk to chase things that are ceremonious and symbolic in nature. And I tell black folk, quit doing that. They've been doing that throughout history. We always want to march about something that's symbolic or ceremonious. So, and at the end, what's the end purpose? You never get anything. Only march and demonstrate and come together and try to get any benefits when you can measure it and know when you got it, and you can take it to the bank and count it. Black folk always want to march and demonstrate for something that's nebulous, and you can't define it, and you can't determine when you acquired it and you got it in your bank. We're going to march to celebrate a march we had in 1960s or when we had it in 1948. That's a useless time. That's a waste of time and energy. Stay away from things that you can't define and can't measure and take to the bank. Another thing is they use a technique called meritorious manumission, which means we're going to cut an avenue or channel for some blacks to be able to acquire things, money and resources, live in a nice neighborhood, to prove to the world that we are not racist. And that means that we're going to pick some black person and pull him to our breast. This is a special black person. He's unique. He's different from the rest. This is what they call a good Negro. And that way they can say, see this example? Look at Tiger Woods. Look at Oprah and all this kind of stuff. Black folk don't understand that even during slavery, when you had 285,000 free, that in that you had about 6,000 blacks that were extremely wealthy. We had about that would be millionaires today. So they try to show you some little exceptional people just to try to prove that racism doesn't exist. And how do black folk acquire and get past that? They learn to understand that white racism is not perfect. It can be beaten if you learn to play the games. That's why in all the 5 books that I've written, I wrote them to show you how to play the game and win and beat it. That's everything from Black Labor, White Wealth, all the way up to the Black History Reader. Another technique they like to do, they like to promote things like integration. Integration is a negative. It's a weakening process. Anytime you integrate something, you don't make it stronger, you make it weaker. And that's why integration has failed in society and why black folk are not moving and achieving anything of significance. Because now they lost their communities, they lost their leadership, they lost their history, they lost their culture, they lost their schools, they lost their businesses, they lost their athletic teams, they lost their music, they lost their leadership, they lost everything by social integration. They went backwards. Black folk are poorer now than they were before the civil rights movement. Do not chase integration. Integration is not the issue. But they always want to tell you, well, Dr. Anderson, the issue is, do you think we should be looking for integration or segregation? Don't look for either one. Both are negatives. What you look for is aggregation. Come together and pool your resources any place you want to. Tell them you don't give a damn about integration or segregation. What you want is what everybody else has got. And that's ethno-aggregation. Nobody else in the country is asked that. Do black folk want integration or segregation? They don't ask Indians and Asians and Hispanics that. And Jews, they don't ask black folk about integration. And the next thing is that gentrification that's coming up. All the major cities in America right now are under attack. All the majority urban areas that used to be dominated and controlled by black folk, at least in terms of population, they're going to be gentrified and privatized and by incoming immigrants and young whites who are going to move back to the city and bring back the wealth they stole out of those cities 50 years ago and rebuild those cities in the names of whites and the white image. That's coming up. That's why even Chocolate City in Washington, D.C., that used to be 78% black, is down to about 41% now. It's going to go down further. Gentrification and privatization means take all the resources, all the public institutions in those cities and put them in the hands of whites who are coming back, who got the money to buy them and own them. Blacks will tell it, be opposed to it. And they just enacted a new law called the Opportunities Act, Urban Opportunities Act, that Trump just got passed. They're going to go, what they are saying, go in these major cities and pretend they're going in there. We're going to improve these cities by bringing in everybody. And so all these immigrants are going to pour in there, and a little bit of money is going to sit in their pockets. Blacks will be lucky to get 1/2 or 1% out of it. So that's why big cities, whether it's Harlem, Detroit, Chicago, New Orleans, they're going to redevelop those cities, but they're not going to redevelop them in the names of Black folk. They're going to develop it in the names of those fabricated minorities and immigrants. The next thing they're going to do to you is that one thing in getting out of it, they still got a gag rule. The gag rule I talked to you about last week, the gag rule was put in place in 1836, says there should be no public discussion about Black people and doing slavery. That was put in by Andrew Jackson back in 1836, which said they had Congress, they passed a rule in Congress in 1836, said no public discussions about Black folk. Leave them alone. It is unwarranted and unjustified, and we do not want any discussions. That was in 1836. And nobody talked about slavery up until about 1852, when Harriet Beecher Stover broke the rule and wrote a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin that started talking about Blacks and started talking about human rights. But she was only talking about Black people. But now human rights mean everybody in the world instead of Black folk. And the gag rule is still in existence. And that gag rule was reinforced back in 1968 by President Nixon, Richard Nixon, and under a policy called benign neglect. Benign means make it smooth and hide it, okay? So and then that morphed into what we call political correctness. Still make Black folk invisible. Don't include Black folk in any programs, affirmative action, preferential treatment, or anything where Blacks gonna move that marker on what you own and control. I'm gonna quit and answer one more, and I'm gonna quit. One of the biggest lies have been told about they use it on a regular basis. This is a big one for Black folk. They always tell this lie about, well, you know, we're an immigrant nation, and everybody has contributed equally to develop this nation. That's the biggest lie that was ever told. 99% of people weren't even in the country when Black folk were building this nation. 99% of all the Blacks in America were the direct descendants of slaves. They were here before all these other people came. They did not contribute. That's a big lie about everybody contributed equally. It was Black labor that built the roads, the highways, the bridges, the buildings, the government buildings, and the school system. It was Blacks that picked the cotton, the rice, the indigo. It was Black folk that fought the wars for them. Black people were the ones who developed this nation. Now, 99% of all the people in America right now are the descendants of immigrants. Black people are the only non-immigrants in the country. Even these people, they call themselves American Indians. They're immigrants too. They came across the Bering Straits about 5,000 or 6,000 years ago and interbred with the Folsom people. They are immigrants, the only non-immigrants are Black people. But they want to make sure under the gag rule that nobody ever mention anything about Blacks' contributions and developing this nation. They said, what did the immigrants do? Immigrants came here as a management class. They didn't come here as a working class to manage and build anything. They came here to manage the Negroes and profit from what they call the American dream, get the cream of the crop, unearned benefits from free land and free Black labor. And in conclusion, I'm gonna quit there. I got a whole bunch of other things I could mention, I'm not gonna mention. But the last thing Blacks need to understand is that today, nothing has changed for the primary reason that they're in a low class, inferior position. And that is about the hate that white folk feel for Black folk. The lack of respect that whites feel for Black folk has gone pretty much unchanged ever since the end of the Civil War. On the eve of the Civil War, Dr. Watkins, a poll showed that 98% of all the whites in America were adamantly opposed to freeing Blacks from slavery. 98% was opposed to them. That's back in 1860. Now, recent polls and surveys I've got completed, that hatred for Black folk and disrespect for Black folk has been going down only 10%. It's gone down from 98% down to 88%. And as far as the immigrants coming here, 63 to 64% of all the immigrants coming into the country hate Black folk and don't have any respect for Black folk. And so we start talking about reparations. Keep that in mind, that 98% of white people in America will always be opposed to reparation. And all these new arriving immigrants also gonna be opposed to it. Why are they opposed to it? Because immigrants and whites live off of two incomes. They need Black right now. They need blacks' earnings. Blacks have a $1.3 trillion worth of income. They want that so that they can live off of two incomes. Whites, Arabs, Asians, Hispanics live off of two incomes as immigrants. They live off of 98% of black money and 100% of their own money. They boycott anything that's black under the gag rule. They don't spend money in your neighborhood. They're boycotting your communities. You're going to go down the tube unless you go back and pick up all these things. And you can get them all by buying those Black labor books, and all from Black labor all the way up to the Black History Reader, those 5 books in the library pack. You can pick up all this information. I'm going to quit right there.
All right. All right. So everybody, I want you guys to know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Black Labor, White Wealth, the Black History Reader, Powernomics, etc. You can check out his books and his library bundle pack and everything else that he has to offer at powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. Do me a favor. We need you all to do us a quick favor. It won't cost you a thing. It'd be very easy for you to do. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the like button. If you're on Facebook, please share this to your page. I'm gonna give everybody a second to do that. The more likes, the more shares, the more thumbs ups you give, the more we can push Black intelligence out to the masses. We reach about 1 million people a week now, and we want to increase that to 2 million, 3 million, 5 million, and eventually we want to be as powerful as the rappers. So in order for us to win the battle against ignorance, because y'all know ignorance and coonery is winning out here, because that's what they're funding. They're funding coonery. We need to fund Black intelligence. So please share. Don't sit on the silence. Don't just watch the interview. Please hit the thumbs up button, hit the share button, subscribe, etc. If you want to see Dr. Anderson, please, if you want to see him on the video right now, some of y'all can't see him. Some of you on Facebook, some of you on Your Black World. If you want to actually see him, you can also go to drboycetv.com, drboycetv.com, and he's actually right there, and you'll see his face and all his brilliance and everything else. So, Dr. Anderson, you said a lot there, and it really got me thinking. And I agree with, I can't think of anything I disagree with. Maybe things there are things every now and then I want to ask more questions about. But every time I read your books, I keep Powernomics right next to me. Like literally, it's always right next to me. And I read it over and over again to try to sink in these ideas, because, you know, a lot of your rhetoric, your conversation comes from the context of being competitive. And Black people are not used to receiving information or analysis that pushes us to be competitive. Thank you, AH3 Detroit, for your donation. We really appreciate that. As Vicky Dillard says, may it be returned to you 100-fold. You know, but the idea of being competitive is seen by the majority society as being hostile. You know, so people like us, Black folks like us, when we're talking, you know, I think that we make whites nervous. They get upset. You know, I know that, I don't know about you, but I know when I gave a speech at a university out in Washington, and it was a Martin Luther King Day speech. And you know me, I'm not going to give you no BS speech about Martin Luther King. I told them the truth. I broke it down. I analyzed it, and I was very friendly toward the whites, not hostile at all. But after the speech was over with, there was a line of Black people, about 200 Black folks in line to get their book signed, to talk to me, to shake my hand. There was only one white person that got in line to shake my hand. And that happened to be a white guy who was raised in Zimbabwe. So he was very comfortable with Black people. All the white people in the room were afraid of me. All the white people there were either afraid of me or offended by me or disgusted by what I had to say. And that's nothing new. It didn't bother me because I've seen that 1,000 times. But it almost seems to me that when you talk about Black folks being competitive, us standing up for our rights, us asking, not even asking for, but demanding what we deserve, people get thrown back by that. They're not used to Black people being competitive. They're used to us getting kicked around and then marching or praying to white Jesus or just hoping that things get better. So it's almost like we spend most of our time hoping that whites will change their behavior, which they don't, instead of realizing that the solution is for Blacks to change our behavior. We must change how we defend what we believe in. We must change how we defend our resources. We must change how we go about accumulating and allocating the things that we have an opportunity to get. We can't sit and wait for somebody else to do this work for us. Can you kind of speak to that in the nature of competition and power as well? I'd love to get your take on some of that.
Well, first of all, you know, when I say, Dr. Claud, you're absolutely right. But I would ask the world and ask the Americans in general and Black people in particular, what are the incentives or motivations for white folk to want to change? What would be the change? If I were a white person right now and I own and control 99% of everything in this country, I own 99% of all the land, the gold, the silver, the chrome, the bauxite, the businesses, the rights, the privileges, and everything in this of value in the society. Why would I want to change when I got control of everything? What's the incentives, whether I'm white or an immigrant coming to this country? Why would I want things to change when I come in as an immigrant and get all the rights and privileges that Black folk have been denied? If I were an immigrant, that's why 63 to 64% of all the immigrants in this country are opposed to Black folk. They don't want to be dealing with you. They don't want to be associated with you. They feel they're above you. Because the federal government classifies them as whites. And Black folks, somehow the Black leadership always thinks that somehow, well, they're people of color and they're going to be classified as us and we're going to take over from white folk. That's the biggest lie and myth ever been perpetuated on a society. Whites are that damn dumb. Every group that comes in this country, whether it's Arabs, Asian, culture groups, language groups, ethnic groups, they're immediately classified by federal classification as whites. And that's why one of the charts I sent you that before is that whites in this country, everybody in this country is classified as whites, but Black people. And they got this myth in their mind that somehow white folk gonna let all these people associate with Blacks and take over. Never gonna happen. Those people are gonna use Black folk just like everybody else has used Black folk to get their goals and their gold and their silver and their good neighborhoods and their businesses, and they're gonna exploit Black folk too. And one of the primary things I left off is that if you take people like Donald Trump right now is stacking the deck against you just with the Federalist Society with appointing judgeships. This is the real thing. I told you before, even if you got lucky, they put in a social construct that makes again that you can't win by controlling the legal system in this country, the legal system. See that's why Trump already has appointed in 2 years he's been in office, he has appointed 30-something federal judges. Think about this, 30 federal judges. Now, put your thinking cap on, Dr. Watson, along with your Susan. Listen this out. Let me give you something to get. Last week you told me you pissed me off 3 or 4 times. Let me piss you off again. Let me really piss you off on this one. Now you got all these Black folk working hard trying to get over. Here's the thing they don't get, that the legal system is stacked against them. And what the legal system is saying is that you can't get justice in this country or get any reparations and everything else in the country unless it's perceived through the eyes of whites. Whites are the ones who determine what you get in terms of reparation and justice. Now watch that. Now, the United States Supreme Court came into existence. The first 57 judges put on the Supreme Court were white slave owners. The first 57 judges appointed to the United States Supreme Court were white slave owners. Now, and since that was up until the end of slavery, since the end of slavery, guess what? Out of another about 120, guess what? 26, 27, all of them been white, basically white racists or white females. That's why currently out of the federal courts and the Supreme Court, let's talk the Supreme Court first. You got 9 people sitting there. You've only had 1 Black man sitting up there, and you got another white man pretending he's Black sitting up there. And that's in the United States Supreme Court. That's determined if Trump goes to trial. Everything must be seen through the eyes of whites. But let's get around and reduce it a little further. Let's go to the federal level for the federal courts, because the Federalist Society are the one that's applying these white racists and conservatives to Trump. Let's go back again. Let's go back to 1790. Now, here's the facts I want you to think about. This is really going to piss you off. Are you ready to be pissed? Okay. Now, it's in 1790, that's when the first immigration nationalization law came into effect. Now, from 1790 all the way up to the present time, they have appointed 1,400 people to the federal courts as judges, for federal judges. Did you know that? They appointed 1,400. Out of all those federal judges, guess how many were Blacks?
All right.
30. Now, and out of 30, guess what? From 1790, you know when the first Black judge got appointed? That was from 1790 up to 1947. We went into 1947, they ever got a Black federal judge in the United States out of 1,400 that make decisions. Now, here's the other sadness and irony. Out of the 30 that's been appointed in the history of the nation, 30 been appointed, guess what? Let me do a little bragging. Claud Anderson by himself played a major role in appointing 3 out of the 30.
Wow.
You go find me right now any civil rights leader or black elected official that can make that same claim. Out of 30, I made 3 of them. Did you know that? No. I appointed 3. That's when I went with President Carter. And that time, Senator Strong Thurman. What's his name? Strong
Thurman.
Strong Thurman was a senator over the Judiciary Committee on the Hill and senator. And I got over, one of the things when I was with President Carter, I got appointed over the what's called property disposal program, which means I can give away all the federal property I wanted just in my signature. Never in the history of the nation has a black person had that kind of power to be able to use my signature alone and give away any federal property I wanted under surplus property program for the federal government. So Strong Thurman came to me and says, hey, in South Carolina, I want some Quonset huts. I want this. I want some piece of machinery, some old bulldozers, some stuff like that. I said, I'll tell you what, Senator, I will give you what you want. You make out a list, I will get it. Because I had 45 people on my staff in Charleston, South Carolina. I said, I'll get you what you want. But I'm not like other blacks. I believe in quid pro quo. You get me something, I'll give you something. I'll give you whatever you put on that list. I'll sign off with my signature alone. All my staff had to do was go out and find the serial numbers on that equipment and I could give it to them. I said, I'll give you everything you want. But I said, by the same token, I want some black judges, federal judges. And he said, what do you want? And I said, I want 3. See, at that time, they only got 30 now. They only had 27 at that time. I said, here's what, I'm on Al C. Hastings of Fort Lauderdale, Broward County, Florida. I want him to be appointed to be a federal judge. I want Joe Hatchett in Jacksonville, Florida to be a federal judge. I want another black guy, I can't remember his name now, in San Diego, California to be a federal judge. That was the first time that one black man could put 3 people into a judgeship. And I traded that off with equipment, given Strong Thurman equipment to get the 3 black judges, federal judges. Now here we are after 460 years, you only had 30 black judges, and damn, Claud Anderson had to put 3 of those in there. And Negroes talking about, well, Dr. Anderson, I'm into this. No, I want every black right now. Tell every black leader, tell them I told you. Get a piece of paper and write down every person that claims to be a black leader or a black organization, and write down beside it what they have done in material terms to benefit black folk, to put something on the books. Not only symbolic, meritorious stuff about I had this idea, I marched with someone. That ain't worth a damn. Show me something that's measurable they put. I'm just using that as an example. I want blacks to start holding black leaders in this country, whether in the politics or the social or civil rights, hold their foot to the fire and started giving some things for black folk. I just mentioned the federal judges. Out of 1,400, blacks only had 30. And out of that 30, I put 3 in it by myself. Now you explain how one black man can put 3 on, you got 44 million black folk. What in the hell are they doing, sitting on their hands? What? I'm asking you, Dr. Watkins.
Well, I don't know. I'd be curious to know how many Barack Obama put in, or what role he might have played with the federal judges. I'm not saying he didn't play a role, but I'd be curious. I don't know. Did you hear anything about Obama and what he might have done?
I'm sorry, say it again.
What about say Barack Obama? Did President Obama do anything in terms of black federal judges that you know of, or
if he did, it might have to be between the first one in 1947, and up to where we are today. It has to be in between there, less the 3 that I told you I just mentioned. It has to be somewhere in that 27. Now and you should be asking, how can blacks advance when justice and opportunities can only be seen through the eyes of whites, through white federal judges or through whites sitting on the Supreme Court? That's why in this country we got 2 kinds of justice. One is called white collar justice, and another is called blue collar justice. That's why black people line up always being classified as blue collar crimes. You know why? Because if he's charged with a blue collar crime, which is a vernacular or change or modification, instead of calling it a black collar crime, it's called a blue collar crime, working job. That's why blacks go into the criminal courts, and whites go into the white collar crimes go into the civil courts. There's no records kept in the civil courts. That's why all these rulings you get now on Manafort and Cohen with President Trump. All these whites are going to go into the civil courts. They're not going to go into the criminal courts. They're going to charge. Only blacks line up in there because see, black folk can't commit. It's very difficult for a black person to commit a civil crime because he can't get that far up the ladder. See, now if you were to go out right now as a white collar crime, you steal $1 billion. That's a white collar crime. But if you break into to a gas station and steal a 6-pack of beer, you know, or rob it for $10, that's a blue collar crime. That's why when I took over education for the state of Florida, they had one black guy there. He had stolen a damn chicken in Florida. Guess what? He got 15 years for stealing a damn chicken. And a black woman in Florida who overspent her money for food stamps, she wound up getting something like 8 months in jail for overspending at Thanksgiving for her children up in North Florida. That's called blue collar crime. Blue collar crime is where you live, where blacks get a harsh punishment, and they're maintained and kept at the lowest level, and they pay a serious fine. And then where white collar crime, you can walk clean anytime you want to. The more money you steal, the easier it is to get off the hook. And that's why right now I'm just concerned about people like Wesley Snipes, who is a beautiful black man. He's being punished now for a white collar crime, and since he used it, they punishing him out there. Beautiful black man, Wesley Snipes, a movie star.
Yeah, he's definitely. In case you guys don't know, Wesley Snipes is very conscious. He cares very much about his people, and I want to make sure that we mention that. And I want everybody to know who I'm talking to. I'm talking to Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. I want to say thank you very much to Brandy and Big Lee 804. Thank you for your donations and your support. This goes right back into the community. Now, Brandy wants to know what the Harvest Institute URL is. The Institute URL, the Harvest Institute, is the institute Dr. Anderson runs. I suggest you go there and consider making a donation or supporting. You can go to harvestinstitute.org. Thank you, Ms. Mello, for posting it. It's harvestinstitute.org. Also, if you want to take a look at some of his books, Powernomics and other books, go to powernomics.com. He's got a great bundle pack for $99 that'll really change your life. And also, Latasha, I want to say thank you very much for your support as well. So everybody who's donated or purchased something, etc., we really appreciate that, because that's how we're going to push our black media. Please take a second, hit the thumbs up button real quick, so more people will see the video. The algorithm brings more people in. Also, if you want to get on the text notification list when we go live, just text BOYCE, BOYCE, to 31996. Text BOYCE to 31996. So Dr. Anderson, let me ask you this. Let me get specific with this situation with black wealth. There's a discussion. I'm looking at an article in the UK Guardian, and this is coming from the Prosperity Organization's Prosperity Now in the Institute for Policy Studies. Here's what they said. They said by 2020, median Black and Latino households stand to lose nearly 18% and 12% of the wealth they held in 2013, respectively, while white median household wealth increases by 3%. Also, they said at that point, white households will have 86 times more wealth than Black households. And they also predict that median Black wealth will drop to $0, that the median African-American in this country will have $0 in wealth by the year 2053. What is your take on that? What are your thoughts when I share that with you?
That's exactly what I've been talking about all of my life. That's what all my books in that library pack is talking about. Common sense should be saying to blacks all over this country and to our Black leadership, but somehow they don't get it. They just don't get it. Right now, Dr. Watkins, how can you talk about increasing your wealth when 38% of all the Black people in America, guess what? They'll be beneath the poverty line. You know what that means? That means they got a negative net worth. How can you have wealth if 38% of your race is beneath the poverty line? Where that means you own zero. Then guess what? That's over a third. We got another third that is sitting right almost on the poverty line. And if I were to take away the little bit of money they might have invested in a car or some furniture or a small house, if I were to take that away, guess what happened? Then 67% of all Blacks in America be beneath the poverty line. Blacks haven't got wealth is a great determinant. Black folk, when Blacks came out of slavery, that was 150 years ago. The average white person at that time had 3,500 times more wealth than average black. 3,500 times more wealth than black. And that hasn't changed. Blacks at that time had a 1/2 of 1%. You still have 1/2 of 1%. Let's jump up a second and show how. Let's jump up to about the 1980s. In the 1980s, about 1986, 1987 was in a 2-year period when Reagan came into office. He changed the structure so that whites could acquire more wealth. And in that 2-year period between 1986 and 1985, 1986, and 87, that general time period, that you know that the number of white millionaires and white billionaires went up almost 300 to 400% in about 4-year period. So now we got something like almost 600 white multi-billionaires. And at the same time, you got about 2 or 3 blacks struggling, call themselves a billionaire. You haven't got a snowball's in chance in hell because you don't control in the means of production. Your wealth comes from being producers. How can black folk acquire wealth if they don't produce anything, Dr. Watkins? If they only gonna, if your social service agency always tell black folk what y'all need are jobs. A job cannot enrich you unless you're good at stealing. You can't get rich by working a job. You got to have means of production. Wealth comes from producing. Now, what can blacks produce? Well, most of well-off blacks, they're in sports and entertainment. Those are employees. What do blacks own and control? They a little bit of land. They never got to 40 acres and a mule. So what I'm saying in those points I just made to you, nobody has ever addressed or nor corrected the primary purposes of slavery that went on for 360 years, another 100 years of Jim Crow semi-slavery, that maldistributed almost 100% of all this nation's wealth, power, resource, privileges, businesses, and controls of all levels of government and opportunities in the hands of the white society. You haven't got a snowball's chance. Who's trying to tell you how to go back and change the conditions? You just mentioned that things are gonna get worse for us. The wealth, we're gonna drop further in wealth. When wealth is what determines your opportunities, and you're gonna get less wealth. So if you're gonna get less wealth in about 2023, that means you're gonna get zero wealth. You're gonna have zero opportunities, and that's just common mathematics. Now, who's gonna try to correct these conditions? Watch the new policies coming up. Everybody's gonna run for a candidate. They're gonna be a candidate for president of the United States. Not one is gonna mention, let's address these issues we're talking about. They're gonna tell black folk, well, what we're gonna do, the Democratic Party, and or the Republican Party has ever done a damn thing for black folks, substantive and measurable terms. They did it mostly in symbolic terms. Now they're gonna say, well, what we're gonna do if all the political candidates, if we take over as Democrats, we're gonna focus on more jobs, ignoring the fact that blacks had full-time employment as slaves. But we have more jobs. That's not gonna correct the inequalities. We're gonna focus on healthcare. We're gonna focus on about 3 or 4 of the different things they're talking about, which is immaterial to black folk. Not one is going to mention, let's focus on what we have neglected doing for 460 years. Which candidate is going to say, I'm going to run now to focus on black folk and correct those conditions? And see, if I was back in politics again, if I was back like I was running campaigns for governors and presidents, what I would have told black folk is, you represent 38% of the Democratic Party. Black folk make up 38% of the voting power within the Democratic Party. Why don't they try to say, we'll take our power and either do several things. Either we'll get out and create a black independent party across America where we focus on our own issues and put our own issues first. You cannot enrich yourself if you don't have a group self-interest. It can't be done. You cannot increase your wealth if you don't have a group self-interest. I would say, create your own black independent party, make that one of your issues. Or if you got 38% of the black voting power within the Democratic Party, hook up with the biggest rednecks in the country, in the South, and say, hey, you rednecks, we'll go with you all. We'll give you our 30%. Trump has got you all identified at 35%. Now we got 7%, we can take over the country. Or lastly, go back, as I said, just vote strictly and out as a black political party, run no candidates, and say, we as black voters will go with whoever promises and delivers the most to black people in terms of measurable benefits. We don't give a damn what color you are. You can be pink, yellow, red, or polka dot. We're not going to vote for any candidate that would not commit and would follow through on doing something very substantive for black folk to change in the conditions, social, economic conditions of black folk in America. You'll never get another black vote. in this society, whether you're running for any political office or you're appointed to a political office, unless you promise and commit to doing something to change what has been unchanged for 460 years and hold all these civil rights leaders and elected officials' feet to the fire.
Everybody, Dr. Claud Anderson is speaking. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, and the Black History Reader. Please hit the thumbs up button. Also, if you want to go check out some of his books and everything he has to offer, go to powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. I saw a sister earlier who supported the channel. I want to find her name. I'll find it. I'll shout you out. But one of the things I was thinking, Dr. Anderson, in terms of this whole wealth gap situation is, it's kind of fascinating to me when I look at that, right? When I look at these studies and these announcements, and somebody releases a study like this every year or so, right? Where every year it's almost like a holiday where we celebrate the fact that Black folks are way behind and nobody feels that they knew anything about it. And it's almost like when somebody's telling us that the median Black household wealth is going to drop to 0 by 2053. It's almost like watching, a car crash in slow motion. The cars are moving very, very slow, and it's going to take about 3 hours for the cars to hit each other. But that they're going to collide, right? And everybody's just watching the slow motion car crash, but nobody's really doing anything about it. And one of the things that's true that I want people to understand, and I'm going to come back. And actually for you guys, I'm going to do a special lecture on this because I'm going to break this down in detail because media really isn't doing that. Here's the deal. When they say that median Black household wealth is going to drop to 0 by 2053, that does not mean Black wealth will be 0 by 2053, right? That was the headline some people using, Dr. Anderson, that Black wealth will be 0. No, Black wealth won't be 0 for every household. There are going to be some Black households out here that are doing better than everybody else. There are going to be some Black people who are going to be far ahead of everybody else. And I will say that the goal, here's the thing, that's going to happen, right? All of this, stuff about 2053 is going to happen. The median will drop to 0. The question you must ask yourself is, for my family, am I going to end up on the bottom half of that or on the upper half of that? Am I going to be on the negative side where I got negative wealth, or am I going to be on the positive side where I have positive wealth? That comes down to that fundamental question I want to ask everybody. Are you waiting for white folks to change their behavior, or are you looking to Black folks, looking to yourself to modify your behavior? Because here's the thing, we got these structural obstacles in place, these things that cause these effects to happen. It's very easy to explain, very easy to understand exactly why Black wealth went backwards. And so when you see these structural factors, the thing you got to understand, everybody, and I'm gonna let Dr. Anderson take over because it's your show, so I want you to do talking, is that one of the first most fundamental problems that you have is that you're relying on the very same sons of bitches to help you solve the problem who created the problem in the first place. You're literally leaning on the very same people who created the problem to tell you how to solve the problem, right? That don't work. You don't go ask R. Kelly how to avoid getting R. Kelly to molest your daughter. Like, you don't ask him. You need to go ask somebody who has your best interest at heart. So a lot of times what happens is that when you're being educated by these people on what it means to succeed, what it means to build wealth, where the opportunities are in America, well, what they're going to tell you is they're going to give you a formula for self-destruction. The formula will be very basic. It's going to be, go to the best white university you can go to, go $80,000 in debt to do that, so you can give us, meaning them, not me, but them, so you can give them all your money. So take about, pay attention now, I taught at Syracuse University, so tuition each year, room for the things, about $60,000 a year. So over a 4-year period, you're transferring $250,000 of wealth away from your family to their families. Well, that's a big first step in having negative wealth, is to give all your money away, right? Like a football team can't move the ball down the field if the first thing they do is hike the ball and go backward 30 yards. You can't move down the field. So then the next thing they tell you to do, and Dr. Anderson, I'd like to get your take on this. This is my little quick breakdown on this. Next thing they tell you to do is take that $250,000 degree that you got from a big white university and go out and try to get you, you might get you a $50,000 job or $60,000 if you're lucky, to try to go pay back $80,000 in student loan debt. So as a result, half of all Black college graduates default on their student loans. The default has a double impact. Number one, that means you're in the hole. So you're not on the positive side of that median of zero. You're on the negative side. And many of us are going to be there for life. The second problem with that is that now you got bad credit. Now, not only do you not have any assets, you don't even have the credit to go obtain assets. The obtaining of assets is the key to building wealth. So bad credit means you can't go buy a house. Well, the number one way that people move from lower class to middle class was through home ownership. Now you can't participate, right? You can't go and start a business because now you're busy slaving at this job to try to make half of your student loan payment, which is still going to keep you in debt for the rest of your life. And that doesn't even add in that third element of just a general lack of financial literacy. You know, why is it that we can go to college and get an $80,000 student loan? This is what I told Bernie Sanders guy when he reached out to me. I said, it don't make no damn sense that as a Black man, as an 18-year-old Black man in America, I would be able to get an $80,000 student loan with no problem, but you won't give me a $20,000 business loan. I can tell you this, a well-trained young person with a $20,000 business loan will typically be as successful or maybe more successful than somebody who went to college who got an $80,000 student loan. So Dr. Anderson, I'd like to get your take on some of this. I want you guys to know, I'm gonna come back and talk about this. I'm gonna literally break down the steps of exactly how this happens and why it was not a surprise to me. And so you guys are at least aware of this. But I'd like Dr. Anderson to give his take on this.
But Dr. Watson, I indicated to you earlier that the first big lie that's being told in this country, and it's always being repeated at every level, is that everybody has contributed equally to the development and building of this nation. That's the first big lie. The second big lie they tell is that education is a great equalizer for race matters in this country. That's the second big lie they always tell. Education has never equalized Black folk in the country. As I said, I could go through a whole sequence of data to show you what I mean, but I'm just not, it's not an equalizer for Blacks. Black folk, for instance, after going to about 360 years of slavery, Jim Crow segregation under laws that says it is against the law to teach a Black person to read and write in a society. If you get caught doing it, it'll cost you $100 to 39 lashes. So when slavery ended, 96% of Black folk in America could not read and write, Dr. Watkins. And when slavery ended in 1860s, 96% of the Black people in America could not read and write. Okay, but in 30 years, when Black folk got out, they understood the importance of an education, so they began to try to build their own separate institutions. And in that 30-year period, they reduced their illiteracy rate down from 96% down to about 42%. No group of human beings on earth has been able to come out of slavery after 360 years of slavery and cut their illiteracy rate in half in a 30-year time period. That is impossible. No, that makes them smarter in that respect than Asians, Arabs, or Jews. People always talk about how smart Jews and Arabs are. Black people hold a record for academic achievement in this country. The problem is that they've never had enough strong self-interest to be able to build their communities and be able to create educational institutions and an economy to be able to use that education. So consequently, after they did well in the 1860s and 1890s, let's go up to 1950. By 1950, when Black folk were getting degrees in college educations to be teachers, an example, that in 1950, that a white high school dropout compared to a Black teacher with a college degree. A Black with a college degree could not earn half as much as a white high school dropout in 1950. Because you see what's happening is still going on. We got a lot of Blacks going off getting educations of different sorts and different skills and rhetoric. But they get master's degrees and mastering not a damn thing. They don't master anything, they just got a master's degree. So even if they get a college education and get all these damn degrees, they haven't got anything to master. They got a doctor. I got a doctor, PhD. I'm a doctor. I'm a master. You ain't mastered a damn thing. So because you know what? Because they don't have an economy. They don't have any place to use that education. They can develop a skill set. If you develop a skill set in college and paid $250,000 for it in terms of loans, where are you gonna get a job? You got to go right back to the white community to look for a job. And then when you go back to the white community to look for a job, to use that education you got, guess what? He's going to place the value of your education and what it's worth to him in terms of paying you. So in other words, you got to go to white college, get a white education, and then after you graduate, you got to go back to the white community and beg for a job. And the problem is that we've never addressed the issue again, as I said over and over again. Slavery stripped us of two things: one, of resources, monetary resources and material resources. And second thing, it stripped of us of a self-interest and a cohesiveness. So if you don't have a strong self-interest that's group-based and you don't have a community, it is impossible in theory and practice for you to be a competitive group, and you cannot compete against whites unless you got a community and got your own economy. You can get all the education you want, but you're gonna still have to go out and look for white folk for a job until you learn what's in those Powernomics books. That's why go buy the library pack. It has all this information. You get all 5 of those books that talk about all these issues from the bottom to the top for $99. Go to powernomics.com and get those books immediately and get back and join your school. And so y'all can have some good dialogue.
Well, you know what, Dr. Anderson, I might make people mad when I say this, but honestly, when I really started looking back on how this system works, this idea that the way to succeed in America is to go give away all of your family wealth to a white university so they can train you to go work for a white person and to feel like a high-paid slave or a low-paid slave for the rest of your life. It's almost like college should get a new name. Instead of calling it college, we should really call it the White Supremacy Training Program. Like in the White Supremacy Training Program, you're going to get trained to go and serve a white person. That's it. You're going to be trained to have a master that instead of the master making you work for free, like on the plantation, the master will give you enough rations for you to, pay rent to somebody else, right? To pay rent to a landlord, and maybe buy some food, etc., but not enough for you to actually own anything, and so ultimately what I'm really seeing when I visualize the whole trajectory, what I'm really visualizing is that we are an important part of this economy. They need us because they can make money off of us, whether we're working for them or we're funding their universities, either with our money or with our athletes. And so there has to be some sort of fork in the road where there are some of us who say, let's make the sacrifice in this generation and the next to build an economy so that instead of going to the white supremacy training program, where you're being trained, you're giving away all of your family wealth to go to a white university to work for a white person. We need to have a Black excellence training program where you can still go to college. You can still, you still might make an investment financially, but you're being trained to either work for yourself in the Black community or work with other people in the Black community to build a stronger Black community. Because it seems to me that when you got these corporate machines that are doing all kinds of business in these communities, you must ask yourself, when those dollars come in, whether it's from the consumers or the labor comes in from the workers, where do those profits go? Where do those, when those revenues are there, where's that money being reinvested? And in most cases, whether you're talking about big corporations like Apple and stuff like that, or big universities like Stanford, or even that immigrant who's got the corner store in the Black neighborhood, that money is leaving the Black community. We're talking about like $1 trillion a year, just leaving the Black community. So even if they passed a reparations package tomorrow, and I'd love to get your take on this, even if they passed $1 trillion reparations bill, which has about is about stronger likelihood of passing as me learning how to fly. But even if they passed $1 trillion reparations bill, we would give away that $1 trillion in 1 year based on our current spending and investing habits. Dr. Anderson, what are your thoughts on that?
But you're right. As a matter of fact, if they had a reparations bill, they really would owe Black folks somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion. They should be pocketing, and you're absolutely right. See what what you just said is what makes why white folks, immigrants included, think that Black folks are a joke. They think we're a comedy act every day. They say, why would anybody have an annual disposable income of $1.3 trillion, which in global terms make them about the 9th or 10th, 11th richest nation on earth. if they see blacks as a nation within a nation. We would be about 9th or 10th richest nation on earth with a $1.3 trillion. They said, what food would have a $1.3 trillion income and would sit there and give it to immigrants and to whites every year and only try to keep 2% in their own hands? 2%, it makes you in an impoverished group. And if I would say, if I were whites right now, I would never support black folk for anything. You know why? I would want that $1.3 trillion to come into my hands. I said, y'all have bigger damn food, give it all to me. I want you to go to every mall. As soon as you get paid on a Friday, as soon as you get that paycheck, run straight to our neighborhood, our community, into our mall and put it in our hands. And by the same token, we ain't never gonna come to your neighborhood. There's no way on a Saturday am I gonna get up as a white man or an Asian Arab and say, I'm going down to the black neighborhood and go to a black store and buy something produced by a black person and give him some of my white money. They ain't that big a damn fool. But see, our black folk are foolish in money. They have no understanding of the value of money and wealth and power and resources. And that's why they wind up being this social bag. And whites know this. So anytime they want to approach a black person, they says, y'all don't need to practice no capitalism, where capitalism means owning, controlling resources and produce wealth and power. Y'all need some socialism. And the best way to get y'all some socialism is to feed y'all some social integration, because that means y'all can just get along and be accepted. And then you can be like that song that was written by George Gershwin in 1935 about black folk. We call Poor Again Best. You can stand out in the middle of a black neighborhood and say, we got plenty of nothing, and nothing is plenty for us. We're satisfied with nothing. We're just perfectly happy. And so I wish I were white so I could sing that song. But see, unfortunately, I'm black, and I got to fight for my people, even though most of them are either stuck on stupid with Gorilla Glue or something's wrong with them. They can't get that in their heads. And that's why I've written all these books after I left all levels of government saying they got to do better. They got to do better. And that's why I tried to create an us too movement saying, come together with your own people, build your own communities, have your own group self-interest. Don't hate anybody else. Be for your own people. Learn how to practice group economics and group politics. That's what my books are about. Make your money revolve around and circulate in your own communities 8 to 12 times before it leaves so you can build wealth that you are asked about. Hispanics get wealth by revolving their money around 6 to 7 times in their community. White money revolves 8 to 12. Arab and Asian money bounces 12 or 13 times. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black money at 1.3 trillion doesn't bounce one damn time. As soon as it's put into a black hand, the danger zone is to get caught between him and a store, a white store or a mall. He'll run over you trying to get to a mall and talk about Black Friday. I'm gonna rush out to Black Friday. That's why they call it Black Friday. These Negroes gonna bring every damn penny to you on a Friday after a holiday. But anyway, I hope I answered your question.
I think it does answer the question. I think that one of the things I'm carrying away from what you're saying, Dr. Anderson, is, you know, there's nothing wrong with black people boycotting white businesses because white people have always boycotted black businesses. There's nothing wrong with you boycotting Asian businesses because Asians have always boycotted you. There's nothing wrong with boycotting the Hispanic businesses. They've always boycotted you. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Show me examples where black people have been able to set up shop in ethnic neighborhoods of any other origin and been able to really make a lot of money and give nothing back. That just does not happen. And also, I agree with you that the reason that we can't just sort of get caught up in the socialist communist bandwagon, because that's what happens. We get pulled over to the left. We get the Bernie Sanders pulling us over into these liberal ideas, is that white folks have that luxury. You know, even if you are a white socialist, you can go hang out with the CEO of Starbucks who will agree with you on LGBT rights and the environment and everything else. But you still have the economic protection of knowing that you can go work with individuals that can help you make sure you can feed your family. For black people, we don't have that luxury. We're working for our oppressor. If we don't establish our own economic umbrella, then we're going to get rained on, peed on, and everything else. And that's what's basically going on. That's really the source of 90% of the things that frustrate you in your life. Most likely is that you work with people. Tell me, anybody, please make a comment. Let me know if you know what I'm talking about. Working with white folks is tough. It's very tough for black people. I mean, you know, as enlightened as people pretend to be, as much as they swear everything has changed, I can't tell you, Dr. Anderson, how many black folks I run into when I go to speak in different places in the country that tell me about the stress that they are feeling on a day-to-day basis working with people who do not understand them, who do not appreciate them, who do not respect them. And so I say evacuate the building and don't participate anymore, and at least train your kids to get the tools to not participate.
But let me describe what being a model for Black folk. In the last 2 or 3 years, we got to try to straighten ourselves out before 2023 gets here, because data also says that out of all the people Blacks are working in 1997, as an example, that by the year 2023, that only 25% of them will be employed. The rest will be obsolete, either to automation, artificial intelligence, or immigration. You're going to be through. Only 25% will be working because they're going to be rendered obsolete and unnecessary. So here's what I would recommend for Black folk based on the books that I put out there. Here's the ideal for Black folk to get up right now, and if you're going to do it in marching, to rally and march, saying this to any person running for a public office. So here's what we want to do. We don't want any more social integration. We want you now to put all the resources you can that we need into the hands of Black people to help us do this. Go back and build our own communities, based in our own economies within those communities, in our own best self-interest. And so we can practice our own form of politics. And we can be a competitive people. Then any resources coming down the tube, we want you to put us and classify us into a protected class, just like it was recommended in 1866 when Blacks came out of slavery. Put them into a protected class. A protected class we call the Freedmen Bureau. Just like today, the same, that's how the Indians got an Indian Bureau that's been in existence ever since 1866. Indians copycatted Black folk. They got an Indian Bureau that's been in existence all these years, but they destroyed the Black Freedmen Bureau to keep Black folk from being protected. Black folks should be put into their own community, into a protected class, and there should be to put up laws that forbid people even to compete against them in the industries they develop. See, in Japan, for instance, they got a thing called the E2s, for instance, which means that in the lowest Black class in Japan, as an example, they're put into a protected class, which means any business that they generate, that the general economy and general groups cannot compete against them. They cannot compete in those. So they set up special industries like the leather industry. The leather industry over there is dominated and controlled by the E2s, okay? In this country, we should set up special businesses in those Black communities that are protected businesses that any immigrant groups cannot come in there and compete against. That's what I'll be demanding from a Black politician, a white politician. 2, forget social integration. Go back and set up Black communities before they're gentrified out of existence and privatized. Build our own communities, provide the money you owe us, and don't give it to the individuals, put it into redevelopment corporations. So that in every Black community, Blacks can borrow that money and build businesses and industries in their own communities. Then put those communities and those businesses into a protected class and let them and encourage and acculturate those Blacks to put their self-interest in politics and business for all other people. And you practice group-based politics and group economics. If you build that model and take that money from reparation, put in there. So if you hear any Blacks right now coming up, they're gonna do what they normally do. They're gonna hear, I've spent 40 years popularizing Black history and 40 years in pushing for reparations. I can guarantee you right now, you're gonna see tons of Blacks coming out of the woodwork trying to talk about reparations, but they wanna be the leaders in it. And most of them don't know their butt from a flower pot in the ground. They don't know what they're gonna do. They're gonna try to get out there and try to lead Black folks so they can lead them the wrong way. You're gonna have a whole bunch of whites jump up to it. I'm interested in reparations for Black folk now. Black folk need reparations, but if we give Black folk reparations, let's give everybody reparations. They're gonna use that old thing about what I call identity theft. See, anything that Black should be coming to Black folk, you're gonna have a continued identity thieving going on to give everything to everybody and take it away from Black folk. And they're gonna do that by expanding the whole concept of victimization. They're gonna pretend that somehow that anybody coming in this country, like Hispanic children or gays or transsexuals, although they're gonna expand the whole concept of victimization so that everybody get benefits. Pretty soon they're gonna have transsexuals looking for reparations. I want reparations too, because I was raped and robbed and molested when I was 3 years old. Any old stuff. So they're gonna expand the concept of victimization, anything to neutralize, to keep Black folk in a status position where they can never change. And so anything that comes up should go to Black folk. They're gonna spread it to everybody. That's why we lost the Civil Rights Movement. That's why we lost the 13th, the 14th, the 15th Amendment, because everybody use it to make sure they divert resources away from Black folk and empower everybody but Black folk.
All right, all right. Well, you heard it from Dr. Claud Anderson. Dr. Anderson is the author of the books Powernomics, Black Labor, White Wealth, The Black History Reader, and also Dirty Little Secrets 1 and 2. Please hit the thumbs up button right now. If you're on YouTube or Facebook, please hit the thumbs up button. Please share the video so we can push intelligent Black media throughout the world. Also, if you'd like your family to be educated on economics and Black history in both, Powernomics covers both, and it kind of connects it in a really special way. Feel free to go to powernomics.com. That's powernomics.com. And I think that's Ken. I think that's my buddy Ken Williams in there. And I want to say, Ken, hit me up, man, because I'd love to have you in there. Ken is a really good guy, and I haven't talked to him in a while. Anyway, so everybody, please give Dr. Anderson a digital thank you, a digital round of applause. Just, a quick thank you to somebody who doesn't have to give us his time, but he does this every single week. Also, please make sure you subscribe at drboycetv.com. That's drboycetv.com. That's where we have intelligent conversations all day. I'm going to have Vicky Dillard on a little bit later on today. So we're always having smart people come through to have good conversations. And we're talking about all the issues that matter in a way that you won't hear in mainstream media. So I want to say thank you, Dr. Anderson, very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and I'm gonna rush right over to the business. Powernomics Corporation. I'm gonna say, I bet you that Dr. Watson gonna send all kind of people to buy those books, and so we can get a Us Too movement going full steam in the country, try to save Black folk before the year 2023. I know they're gonna buy the books because you've told them to, so they always adhere to your mandates. Okay.
Well, you know what? I do not tell people to do anything that I do not believe will help them. And I also never tell people to do something I wouldn't do myself. And I can tell you all that with all my kids, I told all my kids to read Powernomics, and I have all of your books here in my personal library. And I reference these books all the time. Why? Well, because there are things that you get from books like that you don't get anywhere else. I never seen anything like that before. And you and Dr. Anderson, you guys don't know this, but Dr. Anderson was the first person that ever told me back in 2006 when I met him. He didn't know me from a can of paint, but he was one of the first people that told me that it's okay to be radical. I used to think radical was a bad word because at that time, Dr. Anderson, I was getting in big trouble with Syracuse for being too radical, too outspoken about Blackness and stuff like that. And they were really giving me a hard time about it. And I didn't understand racism then the way I understand it now. And I told you, I said, well, you know how they get when you say too much that's too Black, they think you're radical. And you said, yeah, I never forget it. You said that that being radical is good, that's a compliment.
That's a compliment.
It literally flipped my thinking. And I said, yeah, I want to be radical. I want to be different. I don't want to be like all these other people on TV that ain't getting nothing done. I want to do something different. So I would say
right. The opposite of being radical is being superficial and doing nothing. That's why when a woman goes in and get breast surgery, they say we can have perform radical surgery on her, remove the breast. You want to deal with the substance of everything, go all the way to the bone to get rid of it. So being radical is a compliment. That's just like to tell a Black Dr. Watson, he's very militant. Militant is a matter of degree. You said he's supposed to be militant. Okay. If somebody had been enslaving you for 360 years, Jim Crow semi-enslaved for another 100 years, and whipping your butt on the side for another 60 years through political correctness, you damn sure better be militant. I tell me any Black person is not militant, is not angry nowadays after all that maltreatment for 460 years, he's either stupid, naive, or stuck on stupid, or he's emotionally disturbed.
Wow. Well, serious. We're in a serious situation, so that calls for serious people. So thank you very much, Dr. Anderson.
Thank you, buddy.
I appreciate it. And everybody go to powernomics.com if you'd like to take a look at Dr. Anderson's collection. And also make sure you subscribe so that we can follow up and I can bring you guys back in. I'll be back in a little bit later with Vicky Dillard. So I'll see you guys soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.